been a long day. Director Rogers,
Here.
Director Treese,
Here.
Director Harrington.
Here. Did we get Scouten?
Director
No.
Scott.
Or shooting or scouting or something, as Roy would say. I'm here.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. The first item on the agenda for the Housing Authority Board of Directors is oral communication. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone signed up?
We do not, Madam Director.
Okay, well then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the minutes, approval of the minutes for our November 3rd, 2020 meeting. And that's it. What are the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve.
Is there a
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda for the Housing Authority Board of Directors. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to public hearings. And this is to conduct a public hearing for the Moving to Work, or MTW, demonstration program application. Do we have a staff report before we move on to a public hearing? Oh, there's Director Roper.
Hi, sorry, I thought it was not by Zoom.
It's quite all right. Welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Director, we have Director Comey Kevlar to present this report to you. Comey, can you hear us?
Nope, Comey, you're on mute. Wait a second, Comey.
Yeah.
Sound like a chipmunk.
Welcome to 2020.
He has multiple speakers set up for it. I had that same issue for another meeting.
So Comey, just to explain what's going on, there's a connection hiccup. So Director Roper, what does one need to do in such a situation?
He can go ahead and press the settings. Like if he looks at the bottom of his desktop, there'll be a speaker sign. You're going to have to make sure which one it's connected to and like disenable the other one. So that way you won't have that cross interference, because it was really awkward when I was trying to talk. I think all of us was at that Zoom meeting and I just could hear myself echo. It was so horrible.
Well, you're a pro. Mr. Kalavar, would you like to try again?
Chair Harrington, if it's helpful why Comey's trying to figure out, maybe Comey, if you can call in, I can talk pretty succinctly about the MTW program and what we're hoping to accomplish. So today's a public hearing. We've gone through a really thorough public process over the course of the last several months, including multiple public meetings where we've had 80 residents join us in one, another 60 in another. We've spoke with Oregon Law. We've spoken with our resident advisory council, and we also had a presentation to the board, kind of a study session, just to talk about the application and some of the major components of it. So today's an opportunity for us to have our public hearing, and HUD has a very certain process for this. It allows you to hear from the community if there's any interest, and then gives you at least 15 days minimum per HUD guidelines to consider any feedback that you get before we come back to this board in January for approval. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Kreitz. I really appreciate your stepping in there. Yes, we had a very useful briefing at the November 3rd work session. That was very useful. All right, so directors, shall we proceed with the public hearing?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll open a public hearing. Mr. Moss, do we have anyone signed up for today's public hearing?
We do not, Madam Director.
Oh, darn. No one waiting in the wings or anything?
I am not seeing any additional hands raised from our attendees.
All righty. Well then, we'll close today's public hearing, and the next step will be for this to come back to us for approval at our Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 board meeting. The application is due to HUD on January 8th,
That is correct.
which is Friday, January 8th. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Next, we'll move on for an action to authorize the executive director to enter into a contract with J.B. Bronner and Company for pre-development procurement and contracting for the affordable housing portfolio rehabilitation and critical repairs. Do we have a staff report for this item? Oh, I'm going to laugh again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Comey, it's still not coming through for us.
Yeah. We're not hearing your usual rich bass voice. We're getting some really crazy falsetto voice here.
Comey, I just received a suggestion from IT that you actually close out of the Zoom call and try to rejoin. That has helped sometimes.
I think he's done that. Mr.
Yeah.
Kreitz, could you fill in?
Yeah, so over the course of the last several months, we've been taking a look at a strategic kind of asset management plan for all of our portfolios, public housing, affordable. And so we came before this board a couple months ago and talked about the plan to do a rehab and critical repairs project for 4 of our developments. So we also received approval to move forward with, bringing contracts in place. So this contract is just another step in this process for us to move forward with the redevelopment and the rehab of these 4 buildings, which we're really excited about. And Bronner will be key for us in enabling us to get a general contractor on board and all the soft development costs. So they're going to be our key partner in helping us accomplish this.
Excellent. Directors, are there any questions or comments on this item? No? Okay. Well,
I move that we authorize the executive director to enter a contract with J.D. Bronner and Company for pre-development procurements and contracting for the affordable housing portfolio.
we have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Roper. All those in favor of this motion,
Second.
please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to an action to authorize the executive director to negotiate a purchase and execute required documents for the Aloha Inn property. Mr. Kreitz, might there be a staff report? Oops, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'll also ask that maybe Shannon Wilson be moved up so she has the opportunity to talk. So we've been working, we had a presentation, I think last month about the Aloha Quality Inn. It's a hotel out in the Aloha area that we're looking at doing 52 units of permanent supportive housing. We're really excited about this project. We believe it's going to give us the opportunity to really add some really high quality service enriched units to our community. I saw that Comey just joined us back, so we'll see if he has anything to add in his rich voice as the commissioner.
You know, sorry. Does it sound better now?
Oh, it
Back.
sounds beautiful, Comey.
Oh,
Your voice has never sounded more beautiful. You'll just have to go back and watch the streaming video of this meeting afterwards.
I will, Chair. Thank you all. Thanks for your patience. I was actually in the office today, and I'm like, the technology is better there. And then about 5, I'm like, no, I'll go join at home. So that's what I get. Anyway, thank you very much, all of you and Josh. The Aloha Quality Inn, I think we've briefed all the directors. We can answer questions if there's any, but we are at a point now where we are getting close to the purchase and sale, closing with the seller. So it's all going well. We are excited about this property because of the location, the access to services and transportation, and so far so good. We would like your support for the final stretch.
Well, and I appreciate the memo that you also included in the packet as well. Thank you. Directors, are there any questions or comments you'd like to make?
I would like to say something. I'm really excited about this purchase because not only the opportunity to help those most vulnerable in our community, there's so many different resources. I'm glad that they're going to be working with nonprofit agencies. They have a nice lump sum put aside for any damages that may occur. But TV Highway is not only great for public transportation and like other socioeconomic factors like grocery stores is very close, whatnot. But there's so many friendly jobs out there off of TV Highway in that stretch to help them reestablish and become part of society again, help them gain some kind of purpose. And it's going to take a while. And there's so many friendly jobs, anywhere from Jiffy Lube to Subway to Dollar Tree. There's all kinds of places that are felony friendly even, and they'll work with people who have been in the system or are working through a treatment plan. So this is exciting news.
Great. Any other directors?
Yeah, I share your excitement. I'm pleased to see in my waning days here on the board such a good project in my district. And I might add, besides the very well-used and frequent service on TV Highway for bus service, there's also the 88 line, which connects people at that spot with a direct connection to the MAX station at 185th at Jenkins Road, or excuse me, Baseline, as well as a direct connection to shopping at Kinnaman and Farmington. So they've got a choice of 2 different bus routes that intersect at that point. And it's a great project.
Yeah, I'll just echo y'all's comments. I've just really appreciated the briefing, as well as just, some of you may know my background is in social work, and I worked in permanent supportive housing projects before. I worked for the state, and just really excited to see this coming to Washington County. We are truly in desperate need of more permanent solutions for ending homelessness, and this is just such a great example of it. I really loved how you incorporated your plans for bringing in service partners, thinking about culturally specific partners, as well as mental health and behavioral health providers. So just a really well thought out project, really excited to see this kind of develop as you move forward, and I'm happy to be partners with you all in this as you move forward. So do reach out, and looking forward to hearing more about your efforts on this project in the future.
Thank you.
Well, hearing nothing more, what are the wishes of the board of directors?
Motion to approve.
I second.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second to approve authorize the executive director to negotiate the purchase and execute required documents on Aloha Inn. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Commissioner Treese, are you opposed?
No, I had my hand up as an aye.
Okay,
Can you see me?
terrific. So it was unanimous, 7
I'm
to 0.
aye.
Thank you. I think your videos just got a delay. That's all. So I needed to check. Okay, A delay on my end, probably. Next, we'll move on to the third action item, a request for a private activity bond allocation for Forest Grove family housing. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do, Chair. Chair and directors. The Forest Grove family housing is 36 units. It's part of the Metro Affordable Housing Bond project. This action, the developers have approached the Housing Authority to be the bond issuer. And these are private activity bonds. And so the action before you is to approve the application for the allocation and also a reimbursement declaration. This is something we work with county council on, and any expenses 60 days earlier than today are reimbursable. So this action is very important. And the last point I'll make is that the revenue bonds are not the obligation of the county or the issuer, that is the housing authority. They are obligations of the development. So the risk to us is quite minimal, and we also get a fee, half of 1% of the bond issuance. And so we appreciate your support on this as well. It's for the Forest Grove.
One quick question, Comey. By providing this loan, bond financing to this developer, the investor partner retains the majority ownership for 15 years. Is this just for market rate or for affordable housing units?
It is affordable housing. All the units will be below 60%. And yes, there's some 30%, which is extremely low income units as well.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, the investor partner brings in the tax credit equity, and these bonds are also part of the leverage of the Metro Affordable Housing Bond. Leverage was one of their requirements. And so,
Terrific. Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Director Willie?
Yes, Comey, refresh my memory. How much is this allocation?
It's $8 million for construction period bonds. The permanent loan will be smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Any other director questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I motion.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to approve the attached resolution and order requesting up to $8 million for a 2021 private activity bond allocation for the construction of affordable housing. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you, directors. Next, we'll move on to our fourth action item for the Housing Authority, a request for private activity bond allocation for the affordable housing portfolio, 236 units. Staff report, please.
Yes, yes. Good evening, Chair and Housing Authority Board of Directors. The item 4D is a private activity bond allocation for the affordable housing portfolio. That's four developments: Forest Grove, Aloha, Tigard, and 2 in Forest Grove, 1 in Aloha, 1 in Tigard. Total of 236 units. They are currently in the Housing Authority portfolio, and I can't remember the month, maybe in October, we came with a $60 million proposal to cure deferred maintenance on our properties. And I believe Josh mentioned at that meeting that we had 6 to 8 units offline at the Bonita because the maintenance has been deferred, there's water damage. So this 45 million is also a construction period. The permanent period will be about 19 to 20. So this is bonding that is also the obligation of the 4 properties. It's not the obligation of the county or the housing authority. It's the obligation of the properties. And this is not a Metro bond project. This is portfolio rehab for the housing authority. And we discussed the reasons why we are doing this now, which is historic low interest rates, And the Metro Affordable Housing Bond is projected to bring about 1,315 units or more into Washington County. And if we don't pay attention to our portfolio, we could have more serious problems like vacancy and inability to operate them as affordable housing long term. So that's why we're acting now.
Thank you, Director Calavar. Directors, are there any questions or comments?
I'd move for the requested action.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the attached resolution and order requesting up to $45 million for 2021 private activity bond allocation for rehabilitation of affordable housing. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next on our agenda is oral communication. Mr. Moss.
Thank you, Director Harrington. We do not have anyone signed up to speak at this time.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to board announcements. Directors, do you have any announcements or comments you'd like to share for our last meeting of this extraordinary year of 2020?
I'd just like to say thank you to Comey and his team for these projects. What a great way to end the year. It's a real, we're looking for anything for an uptick and positive things to happen. And I just want to say good job, Josh and Comey and the entire team for bringing these things to fruition. And yeah, we look forward to a good start to 21. So good job on this.
Yeah, I would second the comments made by Jerry Willey, and not only the quality, but good to see that we're well on our way in terms of time. We're in a good place as far as meeting our goals, and I think maybe even getting beyond them, our targets.
Just like to, sorry, I just like to ditto the other two as well, but I'm excited just to be a part of your guys' team, knowing some of the properties that you guys are going to be making repairs to for this upcoming year. I've seen them. I know friends who have lived in them, and I mean, they are much needed, and before it gets expensive. I think the only positive thing that came out of 2020 is the interest rates for but that's pretty much it. But in the end, you guys have worked so hard, and I'm so excited to see what Move to Work and Aloha Inn and all these other things are going to bring the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roper. Anyone else?
No, agree.
Well, I want to say that I am grateful for the involvement of our two directors, Director Carolyn Roper and Director Mike Savara. They add value. They're very engaged. Take a look at everything that our team is doing and help ensures that we are making the best decisions possible for our community at large, as we are the Housing Authority Board of Directors. So thank you very much. And yes, a great team, and onward ho we go together through another new year of 2021. Terrific. Well,
thank you, directors.
I think that's it for tonight's Housing Authority Board of Directors. Is there a motion to adjourn the December 15th, 2020 meeting of the Housing Authority Board of Directors?
I motion.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 7-0. See you, directors, in 2021. Stay healthy.
Thanks.
And next we'll convene as the Washington County Board of Directors. Kevin, Mr. Moss, clerk.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. The Board of County Commissioners is now meeting as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services and all other governing districts for this December 15th, 2020 meeting. Commissioner Treese.
We'll come back around.
Okay. Commissioner Rogers,
Here.
Commissioner Willie,
Here.
Vice Chair Scouten,
Here.
Chair Harrington,
Here.
Commissioner Treese, can you hear us?
Here.
Okay.
There we
Thank
go. We heard her voice. Yes, thank you. All righty, welcome commissioners. The first item on our agenda is oral communication. Kevin, do we have anyone signed up to address us during this?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. We have Mr. Dale Fee.
I can you hear me now here?
Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Harrington, Commissioners Jerry Willie, my District 4 representative, and Commissioners Dick Scouten, Roy Rogers, and Pam Treese. I'm Dale Feek, Chair of the Washington County Citizen Action Network, WCCAN, coalition of grassroots advocates dedicated to improving the quality of life in Washington County by promoting healthy and sustainable communities, social and economic justice, and open and responsive government. I have one topic for public comment today. I emailed those comments to you. I'll just summarize the highlights. For the first 70 years of Oregon's property tax, Oregon taxed forest land and the growing trees together. Then for 70 years, we separated the two and taxed forest land each year and trees from private land when they were cut. The money from the trees when they were cut went to counties as property taxes. When counties were still getting their tax when trees were cut, the legislature added in 1947 an additional tax on cut trees, the harvest tax. It funds things for the industries, Oregon State University's Forestry Department, and so forth. While the harvest tax for the industry continues since 2003, counties have gotten nothing when trees are cut, a decision made by the state legislature. I'm going to go on. You can read what I said. In summary, there's a chart that I want you to open up when you read my email. Comparison with Washington State. Oregon has 39% more forest land, cuts 46 more timber, and yet Washington collects roughly 3 times more in taxes when trees are cut than Oregon. Washington's timber taxes go 80% to counties and 20% to the general fund. My ask of you as county commissioners, will you ask our legislators to bring back the severance tax for counties? I believe, and WCCAN believes, this issue will be before the legislature in 2021. It will need your support. It will help Washington County, but it will be even more important for counties more dependent upon the forest industry. Please consider my ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feek. Kevin, Mr. Moss, anyone else?
We do not have anyone else, Madam Chair.
Okay, I would like to note that all commissioners have received a constituent communication report where our office had received 7 different emails from folks. Also, this past Saturday, we had a very well attended COVID town hall with over 40 attendees from the community, as well as about 140 people who streamed the meeting through YouTube. And you can find a question and answer list right from the Washington County website, the homepage at co.washington.or.us. All right, we do have several different agenda updates this evening compared to when the agenda was first posted. Section 4 and the 5 different items there under boards and commissions has been moved to the consent agenda. Item 6A, an action item from Health and Human Services to declare or extend the emergency related to COVID-19, has also moved to the consent agenda. Then there are 2 additional action items. Item E, under County Administrative Office, will be coming back to later regarding body-worn camera program. And then item F under the Sheriff's Office related also to body-worn cameras. Then on the consent agenda, item P, as in pie, pumpkin pie, was revised. That's a grant waiver for request for proposal process. and award contracts for Public Health Institute and Express Healthcare Professionals. Item R, as in register, was also revised. Grant waiver for request for proposals process to purchase Epic Ocean electronic medical research software. Then we have a new item under support services to adopt the resolution and order and amend the fiscal year 2021 pay plan and position and salary report. All right, that's quite a bit. So that leaves us with a consent agenda of, I believe, 27 different items. There's the minutes from December 1st, 2020, 3 items under Clean Water Services, 3 items under Land Use and Transportation, 2 items under Cooperative Library Services, a total of 11 items under Health and Human Services, 1 item under Sheriff's Office, 1 item under Support Services, and 5 items under Boards and Commissions. What are the wishes of the Board of Commissioners?
Oh, go ahead, Dick. Yeah.
I was going to say, I move for approval of the
Move
consent
to accept the
items.
consent agenda.
I would second that. Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Okay, Commissioner Treese approves as well. So the motion passes 5-0. Thank you, colleagues. Next, we'll move on to a presentation on COVID. And we welcome our Director of Health and Human Services, our very own Marnie Kyle.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Harrington and Board. I wanted to say I've been watching, and I know there's been some technical glitches. I just wanted to say thank you for continuing to show leadership and host these meetings virtual, protecting yourselves and really being good leaders for our community. I know it's tough. And it's times like tonight when it's easy to say, oh, to heck with this, let's just go back to being in person because it's easier, but you're really protecting your community and yourselves. And we value your health as well as the rest of our community. So thank you. So just a quick update tonight. We can go ahead to the next slide. So as normal, we'll start with the numbers. And I wanted to give you tonight's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. We have some good news. We have some patients that we're going to be asking for. And we have some disappointing news. So what you'll see here is the cumulative total number for Oregon as of yesterday, the 14th of December. We've had over 95,000 cases. Our statewide case rate is climbing, although not as quickly as it has been. Cumulative deaths is the bad news. We have had several days in the last week of record numbers of COVID-19 deaths, which is really sad, and our sympathy goes out to every family in the state and in Washington County who's lost a loved one. I can't even imagine how difficult this holiday season is for people that have lost loved ones or who have loved ones in the hospital this week. So I know that all of our hearts go out to them and are caring. Go ahead to the next slide. So these are the numbers in Washington County. And as you look at the numbers, you'll see there has been an 11% increase in the numbers in the cases since the previous week, but that also has been a slight decline. And so one of the things that Tricia learned today on her call with the public health, regional public health group is that there is maybe some glimmer of hope when we look at Google data and we look at data around movement of people within the state and within our metro area. We are starting to see that people seem to be listening and complying with the message, and that people are beginning to socially distance and to reduce their non-essential travel. And we can see that reflected in the numbers in the last week or two. And so we're hopeful that people are hearing the message, they're seeing the hope of the vaccine, and they're going to hang in there with us for a few more months until we can get everybody vaccinated. So we can go to the next slide. So this is the epi curve that you guys have seen each week, just showing the increase in cases. And you can see that it is still going up. But if you look from week to week, it's going up a little bit slower in the last couple of weeks. So that's a little glimmer of good news. Next slide. We continue to see a disproportionate impact of COVID-19. This slide's a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. The orange represents the population, and the black represents the percent of COVID positive 19 cases. And so anytime those lines aren't together, there's a disproportionate impact. And you can see that in particular for our Black and Latinx population, there continues to be a disproportionate impact. The Latinx population is still pretty stark. But again, if you remember several months ago, that proportion was 52%. So we're also hopeful that this proportion is declining somewhat, and hopeful that we're really supporting our Latinx community with information, with access to testing, and with access to good medical care. We'll go to the next slide. Just as a reminder, the new metrics that we're using, or the public health indicators, are really looking at case rate. So that's the number of cases per 100,000 people over a 14-day period, and the percentage of test positivity in the past 14 days. And it ranges from extreme risk, which is 200 or more case rate per 100,000, down to minimal risk, which is fewer than 50 per 100,000. So we can go to the next slide. And you can see that we continue to be above the 200. So Washington County and the entire metro area continues to be in the extreme spread category. But you can see that our number in Washington County went from a high case rate of 515 per 100,000 last week to 486 per 100,000 this week. And you can also see the other counties. So that's a little bit of a glimmer of good news. It's still significantly higher than the 200, but better than going up from the 515. So next slide. Just a really quick reminder that the West Coast travel advisory does continue. So we continue to ask people to avoid any out-of-state or any non-essential travel, including non-essential business or social travel. Next slide. So just a quick update on vaccines. You received a pretty thorough briefing on vaccination last week from Carrie Beck, our vaccination coordinator, but I wanted to give you just a little quick update of what's happened since then, which I'm sure if you've turned on any kind of electronic device, you've heard about this, because whether you turn on lost their jobs or who are underemployed because of closures. And so we wanted to just give a flavor of what we're doing in Washington County to support the businesses. And this certainly is not all encompassing. And you did hear a little bit more from Director Angie and Commissioners Treese and Commissioners Willie in your work session a little bit. So they helped me out by hitting a lot of the high points as well. So thank you. So as you remember, your board authorized and we have made available $1.8 million for restaurants in the hospitality industry who have been impacted by COVID. In addition, our public health team has been providing other types of support. So staff have assigned a specific liaison to different business industries because it can get so complex and you don't know who to call or when to call. People can still go to our EOC business compliance and report things or ask questions or call our reporting lines, but we also have specific staff that are assigned to help people in the restaurant industry. We've had staff working specifically with bowling alleys and with indoor play structures. And we've talked about it a little bit, but staff have been really creative in how they've helped businesses because maybe according to guidelines at different time periods, they couldn't be fully open, but maybe their restaurant section could open, or maybe certain activities could happen outdoors. And so they haven't just said, here's the regulation and you can do it or you can't. They've really been creative and helpful. I've been really proud of what they've done. The other is that we have assigned specific staff from our compliance and support group in environmental health to work specifically with the chambers and the business recovery centers. We provided proactive outreach and support for seasonal farms and seasonal events. So we worked with roll-off farms when they were talking about how do we do our annual pumpkin festivals. And so we worked really specifically with them as an example. We worked with the Vermont Sausage Festival to help them figure out how can they safely, because that's a really important fundraiser for them and for their school. And so we worked with them to figure out how they could do it, help them to get special one-time licenses to actually do the work that they needed to do and collect those funds. So staff really have been creative and helpful in this. The other thing is that we have developed really close partnerships with the state compliance agencies, for example, Department of Agriculture, Oregon, OSHA, and the Oregon Liquor Control to make sure that both that we can also work with businesses, but also when we did have a very few handful of businesses that just completely refused to comply, that we would work with those state agencies to bring them into compliance. So we can go to the next slide. So the next slide is the one that you all are probably really familiar with, especially Commissioner Treese and Willie talked about this a little bit today, but Washington County has really invested in helping our businesses through that. We have distributed over 16 million to businesses in the 5 rounds, and they're finishing up, as Commissioner Willie discussed today, that 5th round. They've also made an investment of $375,000, which was matched and made an additional investment of $875,000 through MISO and Craft 3 for those hard to bank small business assistance help. In partnership with the cities, Washington County provided over 1,100 grants to businesses. And in this 5th round, which might be finished now, but a couple days ago, we didn't quite have this number down. So Commissioner Willie or Treese or anyone, if you want to add to this, we did expect to provide an additional 400 to 500 more grants in this last round 5. I think, the business recovery centers have been extremely helpful. And I just wanted to share a couple of stories that we've received because of this. So one is from Waterworks Northwest, and they just said, thank you so much for our grant. Business has been down 40%. but we were able to pay some fixed costs and some payroll. This has been a ray of sunshine on a gloomy business day. We heard from Linmar, sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, who was celebrating 24 years in business. And they said this grant has helped us to renew the outdoor deck so that we can have outdoor dining available to our customer. It means a lot to our business during the pandemic. We really appreciate the grant. And they shared some beautiful pictures of the outdoor deck that they were able to provide. We heard from Periscope Tutoring about being able to continue services. We've heard from Words Cannot Express the Gratitude I feel for your help during this crazy time. My small business has struggled since March. This grant could not have come at a better time. I plan on using the money to pay our business rent at Saturday market so we can keep working. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. So I just wanted to share some of those real heartfelt thank yous so that you know that what you're doing is making a difference to these businesses that are struggling so much. So we can go to the next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about public health disease response that's continuing. We have seen a 42% increase in the need for isolation and quarantine assistance. In the last week, we helped an additional 244 households. Staff, as you know, have had to shift their focus to case investigation. And this shifted focus has enabled us to reach most of the cases. But we do continue to message to our community, to anybody who has a positive test, don't wait for public health to call you. Go ahead and start notifying your own close contacts. Ask them to stay home and isolate for at least 10 days or until they've had a negative test and it's been 7 days since the last exposure. The state data system is improving. They made some changes to the system, cleaned out the system, stopped including some of the negative test results, and it is improving, but there's still a large amount of data that needs to be entered. And then staff really are focused on high impact, high risk outbreak response to stop the spread of disease. So next slide. Homeless services do continue. You can see that we're still operating the respite center. We have 8 COVID impacted folks that are housed at the respite center. Public health has been concerned, so we've prioritized COVID positive patients or those in isolation and quarantine that don't have a safe place. So we may see those numbers go up if there's a need for that. We also have the Safe Sleep West Wing, which is housing 25 homeless individuals, and our winter shelters, as you know, are operating and at capacity, and we continue to have waiting lists. Next slide. Learning support and childcare Director Angie shared some great information that we are going to be able to increase the funding to our school districts. They're all participating in the addition of up to $5 million in unspent public health funds will allow the school districts to carry the learning support programs into 2021. So that's really, we know, so meaningful to families, so helpful and so meaningful to families. And then our child care assistance grants, we've awarded 290 applicants, over $3 million. And it really has ranged from very small home-based providers to the very large child care providers like Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation Department. Again, just for brevity, I won't share a lot, but there are, we receive letters, notes and emails every day from child care providers and families who are really appreciative of these funds that continue to support their needs to either support families or supporting families themselves. We'll go to the next slide. So here's the mixed bag that I was telling you about. Although we're getting hopeful that people are hearing the message and understanding that it's going to take time before enough of us are vaccinated that we can stop the public health strategies like wearing masks and staying socially distanced and avoiding multiple family and friend household gathering. So we saw some data that says that is improving, but we also know that we saw the Thanksgiving bump. It might not have been as large as some people predicted, but if you look at the 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving and compare it to the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, there was a 56% increase in cases after Thanksgiving to the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. So, again, we don't want to see that kind of an increase in the next couple of weeks. We know that we're asking so much and people are so hopeful. They're hopeful because of the vaccine and there's so much focus on the vaccine. But I think we just have to remember that it's going to take time. We received you saw those slides about the number of vaccines that we've received. It's fewer vaccines than we have frontline healthcare providers at this point. And so we do expect every week that we'll get new shipments and those shipments will start to get larger and larger. We're hopeful that the end of January, 1st of February, we're hopeful that we'll be able to move into offering vaccine to more critical workers like our EMS, frontline law enforcement, some of our our essential workers, critical workers that are outside of the hospitals. And then we'll be able to move into other high risk groups like those over 65 and those with chronic health conditions within early spring. And most importantly, I think the rest of us are going to have to be patient and wait likely into late spring, early summer, get in line for vaccination. But I hope that we're all as enthusiastic about getting in line for vaccination when it's our turn, as Oregon has been really great about wearing our masks and physically distancing. So just those reminders, and I think, next slide, I think that's it. Any questions or comments?
No.
Commissioners, any questions of Ms. Kyle?
I just appreciate the ongoing information, support, and the work that everyone that you're doing and your staff, Marnie. I know this is a long road, and keeping the energy up and keeping the attitude positive is not easy. You've done a great job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. Marnie, you and your team have been working all hands on deck for months and months and months, certainly longer than we ever envisioned. And I think I'd echo the same comments for the business recovery team that Pam and I have had the opportunity and certainly the pleasure of working with. Everybody has been working extremely hard. We're still focused, looking for places that we can help businesses, and I think we've done a great job of that. So I'm very happy to be a part of that. But I just can't help but be amazed about how much and how much you've learned, Marnie, and your team, and how much you've directed our county, and certainly done a great job for that. So unfortunately, I can't say the end is near because I don't know that, but keep up the good hard work on that. And certainly I'll be glad to refresh, or not refresh, but to bring everybody up to speed as soon as we find out our latest grant money program, how many people we actually pushed out some money to there, plus the hotels, plus a variety of that. So we've got several projects still in play for the next 15 days. So we're going to be really pushing hard to get to the December 30 date. And then I think maybe I'd love to say we're going to hit the pause button and take a breath. But having said that, you know how things change. And so maybe not, but we're still focused on it, just like you and your team have been. And I think not only just, obviously Health and Human Services, but Jack's team and everybody else. This has been really, really focused, good work that we're doing. And I can't say congratulations and good job enough to enough people. Everybody's been working really, really hard. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it has been definitely all hands on deck. I can see Diane and Clean Water Services was a tremendous help, especially getting out PPE when it was most critical. County admin, you all, it really has been an amazing all hands on deck. We have seen what Washington County is really made of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marnie. It's been a great effort on you've given us good, clear, lucid presentations all year. A lot of hard work from you and your staff. Great work with Clean Water Services. It's been our best foot forward in a pretty dark time. So, and it's been particularly dark in the last weeks, but I hope that this is the beginning of the end. We'll see.
Thanks. Commissioner Rogers, anything?
No, I think everything that needs to be said has been said. I continue to say we push for a set of standards on all businesses that are the same. I'm still not happy that we're picking winners and losers of business. I think that we need standards that are equally applied to restaurants and bars and bowling alleys and workout rooms. And I think that we just need to continue to stress that businesses need to be responsible, wear masks, social distance, do all the things they need to do. And I hope that we continue to stress that if we are all in this together, that we are all in this as a business together as well. So I have nothing but good things to say about the staff. I would also say something about our board. They've worked very hard, timeless occasions. We've come together and looked at the issues. I know that the chair and I have worked on a different group than Jerry, what you and Pam worked on. I commend you for all your efforts. You've done great. We put in a lot of hours, and I know Commissioner Scouten has as well. So this board has been very committed. I certainly don't take any homage with what our staff has done or our board has done. And my only comments about the businesses is that I do think that there are a lot of people going broke out there, and we don't want that to continue if we can prevent it. And so I'll stop with that.
I think the best case is if we have to continue working hard with new money from the feds. So that would be that's the best case, right?
Yes. Well, let's hope that funding can be more focused on economic business relief versus needing to finance public health efforts all through the entire new year of 2021. But we certainly know that we have an expert team to help support our decision making, but also to support everyone here in our community, as well as working very collaboratively with our state and regional partners. So thank you very much, Marnie. You've made an incredibly challenging and difficult year less arduous. And to all of the employees of Washington County and Clean Water Services, thank you for being dedicated public servants and going above and beyond day in, day out, week in, week out, so that our community's needs are taken care of. So onward to a new year. Thank you. All right, so that's it for the presentation section of our meeting. For those members of our viewing audience who may be wondering what happened to boards and commissions, We chose to expedite those appointments tonight and adopted the full slate as part of the consent agenda. So Joe Finnegan is now part of the Farm Board of Review. Lindsay Washburn and Todd Schaefer are part of the Public Safety Coordinating Council. For the Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee, Linda Feldman and Mary Manso, thank you. To the Rural Roads Operation and Maintenance Advisory Committee, thank you, Kristen Kennedy and Alan Ross. And for the Rainbow Lane Special Road District Board, thank you, Allison Crace. Next, we'll move on to public hearings. This evening, we have one public hearing under support services, and that is to conduct a public hearing to consider a resolution in order to amend the personnel rules and regulations and amend temporary policy T as in Thomas -312. Do we have a staff report on this before a motion to conduct a public hearing?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Good evening, Chair Harrington and Board of Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jack Liang, Director of Support Services. We have a brief staff report for you before the public hearing. And as you know, that the county has implemented the temporary policy T312 to expand the Washington County's vacation accrual cap. And then this agenda item is actually about amending the temporary policy T312 to allow more time for the staff to do that. And then because as part of the temporary policy T312, we are amending the personnel rules, which relates to the max vacation accrual as well. And the county code 2.320.080 require a public hearing whenever that we amend the personnel rules. So I'll hand it all over to Eva Labonte to provide a brief update on the nature of both of those amendments.
Thank you, Jack. Good evening, commissioners. Yeah, we are bringing this amendment to a policy that you approved in April 21st of this year to extend the cap for vacation accruals. And listening to Marnie, Kyle, and what you were saying, this is to support those amazing employees that we have at Washington County who have been working so hard that they don't have the ability to use their vacation and their administrative leave for those employees that are exempt. And so what we're asking is to extend that raised cap from June 30th, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. When we first put this policy in place in April, I don't think any of us knew that it was going to be this long until we had the ability to take a vacation and enjoy and relax and renew. So we are asking to extend this in honor of our employees who just can't get away because of the hard work that they're doing for the county and for the community.
Commissioners, any questions on the staff report? We have a lot of good information in the topic.
It's the right thing to do.
So do we have a motion to open a public hearing?
Madam Chair, you do not need a motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, great. Well then, we're going to open a public hearing on this matter. Mr. Moss, is there anyone who has signed up to testify?
We do not have anyone signed up, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission for this resolution in order to adopt the temporary policy T-312?
Move to accept.
Move for the recommended action. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, colleagues. Next, we'll move on to the action section of our agenda. We have 5 items. If you're looking for item A, we took care of that under the consent agenda. So the declaration of the emergency related to COVID-19 has already been extended to January 5th, 2021. Boy, wouldn't we like it to end by then. We should be so lucky. Next, we'll move on to item B, receive the Affordable Housing Bond Program Annual Report. I'm looking forward to this presentation.
All right. Well, good evening, Chair Harrington and commissioners. My name is Comey. I am Housing Director. We are pleased to bring forward the first annual Affordable Housing Bond Program report. During this first year of implementation, a lot has been achieved. I think the intergovernmental agreement IGA was signed last December, and you'll be hearing about the 8 affordable housing projects that we have awarded housing bonds, and we'll be producing 705 new units in Washington County. That's close to $250 million of new investment in the county, hundreds of family wage jobs, and we are just pleased to be a part of it. I want to take a moment to recognize the other county departments that have been involved in this work. Community development, land use and transportation, county administration, and the support services area, we have legal, that's county council, finance, purchasing, and communications. I also want to take a quick moment to recognize housing department staff leading the work, which is our housing development team, the housing finance team, and the entire management team. Finally, I want to recognize you, Chair Harrington, and all the commissioners for your ongoing support and guidance as we work to implement the Affordable Housing Bond. This is a significant resource for our region and our county. With that, I'll hand it over to Shannon Wilson, Housing Development Manager, to take you through our presentation. And we share your excitement, Chair, so here goes Shannon.
Well, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you virtually this evening. Wanted to get started. Next slide, please. Just to provide some context, I think you're all familiar, but just to kind of level set us. So the Metro Regional Affordable Housing Bond was approved by voters in November 2018. Following that, Washington County worked to develop its local implementation strategy. So with that process, we brought 3 drafts to your board for review and approval. It was informed by community engagement, by public comment period, by feedback from local jurisdictions as well. And that local implementation strategy, along with the intergovernmental agreement between the county and Metro, were both approved in December of 2019. And with the Affordable Housing Bond, Washington County's allocation is just under 116.5 million, and that is to produce 814 units of regulated affordable housing over the next 5 to 7 years. And I think you're all familiar as well, but just Washington County's implementation area for the bond is a little bit different than the county's boundary. So it includes the portion of the county that is also within Metro Service Districts, that excludes some portions of Western Washington County, particularly North Plains, Banks, and Gaston. And then it also excludes the cities of Beaverton and Hillsborough because those jurisdictions receive their own allotment of Metro bond funds. So kind of the headline for our progress in 2020 is that Washington County awarded $85.2 million in affordable housing bond funds that support the development of 705 units of affordable housing. And this work was really done efficiently and equitably. And so I'll dive into what I mean by that as we go forward. So here you can see how those 705 units, how they work to achieve the Metro Bond framework goals and also the county's goal. So that first goal, the permanent supportive housing units, that one is the Washington County specific goal. Washington County is one of 2 implementing jurisdictions of the Affordable Housing Bond to have a goal around permanent supportive housing units. The other 3 goals are part of the Metro Bond framework. So goals around family size units, 30% median family income units, and the total number of units. And so as you can see from that chart with our phase 1 project and then the projects approved this year, that Washington County is well prepared to meet these goals as we move forward with implementation of the program. Next slide, please. So in terms of efficiency and implementing the program, we had a quick deployment of funds. So it was based on communication with local developers, available real estate opportunities, and favorable market conditions. So in March of 2020, the county released its NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability. And even though it was right as the pandemic was beginning, with applications due at the end of May, and we did extend that application period, we really still got a strong response to that NOFA, and that really is a testament to the strength and capacity of our local development partners that are here within the county. And so to put that into a regional context, Metro has approved 15 projects for either concept endorsement or final approval, and 10 out of those 15 projects are located in Washington County. So 8 have been funded with the county's allocation, and 2 have been funded in Beaverton with the city of Beaverton's allocation of bond funds. Next slide. So another way to look at efficiency is to look at the average per unit award of affordable housing bond funds. And so for the 8 Washington County projects, that average per unit award has been just under $121,000 per unit. And that is $22,000 less than the per unit allocation. So if you took the whole Metro bond allocation for the county and then divided it by our total unit production goal. And so that was done intentionally as a way to provide contingency and a way to provide flexibility as we administer the program moving forward, and so that the county is best suited to meet these program goals. And next slide, please. Another way to look at efficiency is to look at leverage. And so you can see in the chart in this slide, the leverage of the Metro bond funds for the 8 projects that have been awarded to date. They're leveraged at a ratio of 2 to 1. And as Comey mentioned as well, the total economic investment to come to the county is just over $250 million. And next slide. Advancing racial equity is an important component of all our work at the county, and definitely with the affordable housing bond. And one way to look at that with regard to the bond is the geographic dispersal of projects. So in this slide, the map on the right, you can see that visually. You can see where all of the projects there with the Salt Creek project in southern Tualatin near the county's southern border, the Viewfinder project, which is the county's phase 1 Metro bond project on the eastern border. And then as you move west to Cornelius with Plaza Los Amigos and Forest Grove family housing. And I do want to take a moment to focus on the fact that all this work is really done on the land of Indigenous people. And so that includes the Apalati, the Clascany, and the Kalapuya tribes.
I was just going to thank you for putting that on the slide, Shannon, so I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Another key indicator of our key way we're working to operationalize advancing equity is to look at who is sponsoring these projects. And so nearly all of these 8 affordable housing bond projects are sponsored by a culturally specific organization, or they include a partnership with a culturally specific organization. So it's either as a co-developer or as a partner for services. And so in that photo on the right, you can see a socially distanced resident focus group that was held at the end of September. Excuse me, it was led by Vienna Star, which is they're a locally based affordable housing developer serving the Latinx community primarily. And they're a partner both in the Forest Grove Family Housing Project and the Plaza Los Amigos project. So 2 of the 8 projects that have been awarded funds so far. An important aspect of equity during the construction process itself is looking at contracting and contracting with minority and women and veteran-owned businesses, disadvantaged and emerging small businesses. And that goal for each of these projects ranges from 20% to 35%. And I did want to take a moment and highlight the progress that has occurred in this area for the county. When we brought our first draft of the local implementation strategy forward, it had a goal of 10%. And from feedback from your board, feedback from Metro, community engagement feedback, feedback from developers, that goal increased to 20%. And then as we got the applications in for our NOFA, that goal increased further for a lot of the projects. So they're in a range between 20 and 35%. I also want to highlight that, thank you, Chair. I also want to highlight for the Aloha Housing Project that a Black-owned prime contractor was selected. And so often when we talk about contracting, that's actually the subcontracting that occurs that the general contractor or prime contractor does. So in the case of the Aloha Housing Project, to have a diverse prime contractor is also an important component and something to consider as we move forward with equity in this area. Another important area regarding equity is around community engagement. And so each of these 8 projects, the design of them and layout has been and continues to be informed by community engagement. And that community engagement is really focused on reaching communities from the county's Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. And there on the right, you can see a screenshot from one of the planning sessions with the county's AmeriCorps member and also with members of the Somali Empowerment Circle, which is one of the groups the county is contracting with to do virtual listening sessions around the county. So we've had 4 of those listening sessions this fall. Another one is scheduled for this Thursday. And then we're also developing a survey that will be released in the next several weeks and are working to translate that into each of the county's safe harbor languages as well. The next is the phase 1 project, the viewfinder. So this project, as you may remember, each jurisdiction was allowed 1 project that could be funded ahead of the local implementation strategy being in place and ahead of the IGA. And so the viewfinder was the project the county selected. So this drone footage is from just a couple of weeks ago. That's the site there in the middle. And so just wanted to highlight that the project is under construction, began construction this summer. It's located in the Tiger Triangle, that's 72nd and Baylor there. And just gives you a sense of some of the existing development and also redevelopment that is happening there in the triangle as a urban renewal area and how the viewfinder, how that project fits into that. And that project is scheduled to be complete in late October of 2021 and has 81 units. So while we want to highlight and with our report highlight, what we've been able to achieve in 2020, we're also always looking ahead. And so want to highlight a couple of things as we look forward as well. So you can see with the chart, the remaining unit production goals there. So we have a total number of units to produce. So out of that 814, we have a remaining 110 to produce. And 106 of those units should serve 30% median family income households. 20 of those should be family size, and 42 of those units should be permanent supportive housing units. And that the bottom row on the chart there are the remaining affordable housing bond funds to do that work. So we already have 2 pipeline projects. One we are bringing to you later this evening. I also want to highlight the Metro does have regional acquisition funds. So these are funds that they are administering separately, but they do have funds allotted for Washington County. And so we have been working with them to identify potential sites. And so I wanted to highlight that as an additional resource because those funds and supports are in excess of that, the 31 million that is remaining in affordable housing bond funds. So you saw the first project, the viewfinder is under construction. The additional 7 projects will begin construction in the next 6 to 18 months. The Forest Grove project that the Housing Authority Board reviewed funds for is one of the first to begin construction early next year. And then finally, as we look forward, we are excited about the alignment with the supportive housing services measure and look forward to additional conversations around that. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time and for your ongoing support, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Shannon, I have a quick comment. Thank you. I think in the more extensive, more lengthier report, I really appreciate the shout out to the Five Oaks Museum's exhibit and the really brilliant curating work that was done by Steph Littlebird Fogel. I know you've hired her to do some art consulting work for the housing projects, but she did a great job curating This is Kalapuya Land at the Five Oaks Museum. And for those who haven't seen the show, it's on the web, it's on the Five Oaks Museum website, and it's a great revision and rewrite of an earlier exhibit at the Five Oaks Museum, which was called This Kalapuya Land, and it's now been rewritten as This is Kalapuya Land. And so I appreciate the shout out to that exhibit and tying that into our housing project, and look forward to the work that Ms. Starbird is going to do for us.
Thank you.
Other commissioners, any comments?
Yeah, I'd like to comment from the standpoint of how impressed I am with the ability to reach out to minority businesses for the contract work. And when we assign a minority business the opportunity to be the prime contractor, that's what we get. We get much more success in attracting the minority businesses. So I was concerned about the 20% aspirational goal, and I'm really excited about the fact that we well exceeded that. And so congratulations on that, and keep up the good work. That's a great testament, I think, to what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? So do we have a motion to receive the Affordable Housing Bond Program Annual Report?
So move.
Motion from Commissioner Willie, a second from Commissioner Roy Rogers. All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much, team. You've exceeded my expectations. I am so very proud of your follow through, and we look forward to continuing to see great progress with the utilization of the public's funds. And thank you very much for issuing the report and also making a presentation to the public in tonight's meeting. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, commissioners.
Great. We'll then move on to another related affordable housing topic, and that is to approve the Metro Affordable Housing Bond Concept Endorsement Approval and Housing Production Opportunities Fund for the Aloha Inn project. Staff report.
Chair Harrington, commissioners, County Administrator Tanya has indicated that she prefers we wait on the Housing Production Opportunity Fund until your board adopts guidelines, hopefully in January. So we would appreciate going forward with the concept endorsement approval only at this time. Administrator Angie?
Thank you, Comey. So in partnership with Housing and Community Development, we are working on creating guidelines, because right now we don't have guidelines. And we feel it's very important to move forward with board approval of those guidelines before applying the funds to this project, or other projects. So that will be coming forward to the board in January.
Does the delay of the $500,000 affect the ability of the project to proceed at this time?
As long as we get it approved before March, which is when we hope to actually disburse funds and start construction and start the rehab, we should be fine.
Okay, terrific.
But we'd like your action on the concept endorsement, however. Today.
Okay. But I would move that that we approve the concept endorsement for this particular housing project.
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other commissioner questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay, very exciting project. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, commissioners. Next, we'll move from housing services over to land use and transportation. And tonight, the topic is adopting the technical guidelines for the habitat assessments required pursuant to Community Development Code Section 422, significant natural resources. Director Roberts, are you kicking off a staff presentation tonight?
I think our folks are on. Teresa or Corinne will be doing a brief staff report.
There's Teresa, there's Michelle, Teresa Cherniak, there's Michelle Miller. Do we have? Well, there's Suzanne Savas.
And we'll need Corinne Arendes.
Mr. Moss, do you see Corinne Arendes yet in the list?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair.
Oh, the marvels of technology, bringing us all together.
Indeed.
Right. I think, Stephen, I think we now have everyone.
Thank you. Well, I'll go ahead and turn it over to staff. We'll walk through a brief PowerPoint presentation and then happy to answer any questions that you have. And I believe you are going to offer public comment opportunity on this, even though it's not a public hearing.
So staff report first.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. This is Corinne Arendes with Community Planning. I'm here to present the staff report on the Habitat Assessment Guidelines. And also on hand tonight is my colleague, Michelle Miller, also from Community Planning. Much of the information presented here tonight will likely be familiar to your board and others who may have attended last week's work session. However, we want to ensure everyone participating tonight is familiar with the information in the staff report. So to start with some background information, as of today, December 15th, the changes made to the Significant Natural Resources Standards and the Community Development Code, or CDC, through ordinance number 869A are now effective. These changes include new submittal requirements and the Habitat Assessment Guidelines, or guidelines just for short, instruct applicants how to meet some of the new submittal requirements. As just a reminder, these submittal can now be submitted. These applications can now be submitted, and therefore we'd like to have these habitat assessment guidelines in place. So there's guidance for applicants about how do they meet these submittal requirements. So the guidelines provide technical instructions that utilize objective measurements, and they do require technical skill and expertise to complete the tasks described in the guidelines. The guidelines are really limited in scope. No new policy or regulations are created, and they are very specific. They don't apply to all of the Section 422 requirements, just those select portions of CDC 422-3 that we'll be talking about. Next slide. So the guidelines are structured by task, and they provide instructions on how to field verify the upland wildlife habitat boundary, how to identify the size, type, and extent of the habitat on a development site and evaluate that habitat. And finally, how to rate the different habitat values of the on-site habitat. Next slide, please. So the boundary of the upland wildlife habitat is to be determined based on the outer drip line of the tree canopy by professionals working on the development site. The original inventory for the upland wildlife habitat was highly reliant on the presence of tree canopy in the urban area to identify significant areas. So this methodology in the guidelines mirrors that process. In addition, the methodology also focuses on two objective measures, tree size and density of growth, in order to determine the boundary. Next slide, please. So identifying and rating the habitat. For the first task, identification and evaluation, steps include identifying the plant communities and their location, recording plant species and the frequency they present within the community, recording cover composition, so that's like the rate of natives to non-natives, as well as additional attributes that provide habitat value. And the second task, you use the information collected in the previous task and you rate the habitat as good, marginal, or degraded. While even degraded habitat still has qualities to function as wildlife habitat, the more attributes that are on the site and the more native cover present, the higher the overall rating. Next slide. So ultimately, the applicant puts together the information that they've collected and they put it on a site plan. So that results in a map of the existing habitat conditions that is submitted as part of the habitat assessment. Next slide, please. So we follow the department's standard practice for adopting a technical document through resolution and order. However, due to the level of interest in this topic, we did follow a more inclusive review process than usual. So in addition to seeking public comment on a review draft, we did have a process that incorporated deliberation by the Planning Commission, and staff notified all of the interested parties of record for Ordinance 869A that the draft was available for review. And staff did receive numerous comments that did inform the process, including several from individuals and organizations with related professional experience. So after last week's work session, the revised guidelines was published in the packet for this meeting, and notice was provided by our communications team to the general public through the weekly LUT news blast as well. And then in addition to comments letters included in the staff report, I believe the board has also received some comments directly. So the Planning Commission considered draft guidelines on December 2nd. The Planning Commission as a group strongly supported the inclusion of, could we move the next slide? Thank you. So the Planning Commission as a group did strongly support the inclusion of work experience in the professional requirements. They also had to weigh community requests for a longer process with the need to be prepared for those applications we're assuming people are going to start submitting. And although they ultimately recommended adoption to this board, their vote reflected the fact that they had to kind of weigh and balance those competing priorities. Next slide. So the review process and public input we received on the draft guidelines did result in a number of staff recommended revisions. These are shown on the screen here. And we did address these in detail at last week's work session and in the staff report as well. These changes are identified in a track changes format in the revised guidelines included in the packet for tonight. So I'm not going to go over all of those, but we did make numerous changes based on the comments that we received. However, our recent work on the significant natural resources has occurred within the longstanding existing policies in the county's Acknowledged Goal 5 program. And a number of the policy-related requests were made by the public. And staff does plan to bring those to the 2021 work program discussion. So you'll be hearing some more about those moving forward. Next slide. So staff's recommendation tonight is that you adopt the revised habitat assessment guidelines. And these are shown in that revised track changes format in attachment A of our staff report. And they are also provided in final form as Exhibit A of the resolution and order. And that, I believe, is what you'll want to refer to should the board choose to adopt the guidelines as staff as recommended tonight. And with that, I am happy to take any questions you might have.
Yeah, I have one question that might be directed more to our legal counsel. I know we received recently a letter from an attorney, Mr. Dobson, and in substance, he objected to our adoption tonight because he's saying that effectively these guidelines are really substantive changes to our development code and our ordinance, and we're still subject until next year, beginning of next year, to the strictures about having an ordinance season. We don't act on land use ordinances outside of the ordinance season after October 31st, at least for the remainder of this year. And I was wondering if the county council or someone in his office could comment on those objections.
Hello, Commissioner.
Sure,
Scout.
Commissioner. Oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Jackie. Go ahead and jump in. I gave a little presentation to prime it at the work session. I'll let you finish it up.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that I took a look at Mr. Dobson's letter, and he's pretty much been arguing the same thing over the past several weeks, if not months. I'm very confident that we are following the charter, and that not everything that touches land use is an ordinance. So based on that, I'm just going to disagree with Mr. Dobson that these regulations are going to be something that is something for an ordinance. It is a technical document about how LUT is going to approach applications and what the applicants are going to need to show in order to satisfy the different requirements. I'll leave it at that, Ellen, unless there's something else, or Commissioner Scouten, if you had another question.
Well, I'll just add that, this is like we do for sidewalk standards or for clean water surfaces for wetlands. And it's technical standards that experts weigh in. It's not a policy that is addressed through land use ordinance.
Okay, thank you for that.
Do any other commissioners have any questions on this staff report or anything from constituent public comments that you wanted to inquire about? Nope. Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the revised habitats assessment guidelines through the attached resolution and order with the guidelines as Exhibit A.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Kevin, we're going to open up for public comment before this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. This is why we have a board clerk, especially for these evening meetings. All right, so we're going to put a temporary hold on that motion, and I'd like to entertain, I don't need a motion for this,
No, you do not.
Public hearing. Just trying to make sure I always follow the right process so we don't get an appeal. Thank you. Okay, so we're opening a public hearing. Mr. Moss, do we have anyone signed up to testify on this matter?
We do, Madam Chair. First up is Mr. Jim Long, representing CPO 4, which you received a letter prior to the start of the meeting. Mr. Long, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. I just finished this testimony late today, about 20 minutes before this meeting, because it's so important to do, but it's also been such a rush job to get through here. We haven't had adequate time to comment on these things. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. CPO4M membership didn't have the ability or time to discuss the latest version of the habitat assessment guidelines because they came out too late for our scheduled meeting. And none of the other CPOs have commented on them at all. None of the other CPOs have been able to comment on them. So I'm speaking on behalf of the CPO4M steering committee. We got empowered at our last meeting to comment on these. One draft habitat assessment guidelines were released just prior to the holiday weekend, the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. One of my favorite sayings is the good things take time. Back last May 22nd, when LCDC unanimously approved both the enforcement order and the injunction, Land Conservation Development Commissioners understood the importance of the local dilemma with only a small amount of significant natural resources remaining in Washington County. LCDC also recognized the difficulties for citizen involvement and engagement during this pandemic, and they granted Washington County almost a full year until May 1st, 5 more months of 2021. So I ask, what's the rush here during the holiday season? CPO4M wishes tonight's agenda was a public hearing with adequate notification so more people could contribute their thoughts. Many people did not even know the habitat assessment guidelines was on your agenda tonight. CPO4M has not had adequate time to confer with our volunteer scientific experts to the recent substantial changes to the habitat assessment guidelines. Have staff, wildlife habitat biologists at Clean Water Services and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife review the current guidelines we are discussing tonight? We don't understand why the county isn't using that full time allocated by LCDC to come up with a vetted ordinance with habitat assessment guidelines. This is a quality of life issue for many residents who appreciate birds and other wildlife. There are many academic disciplines with experts such as biology, botany, and ecology that should be involved in this process. Others with expertise on habitat conservation like Metro and THPRD who could provide the county with input on how to optimize the HAGs and the wider SNR program if only provided sufficient time. We should use independent experts. CPO4M has been deprived of the time necessary to have the habitat assessment guidelines vetted by experts. The county process has not been adequate. Furthermore, these shortcomings have affected our ability to comment. And it's not just our CPO, it's other CPOs also. Last month, voters approved changes in your ordinance season, and I would think that would give you some more flexibility. We want the public and different agencies to review and comment on the most recent versions. We support the idea of extending the public comment period to 45 days. We need more than the 20 days we were given to comment on revisions. Next, I want to talk about photo points. Early versions of the habitat assessment guidelines referred to diagrams and sketches on the site plan. We are glad the technology of using, quote, photo points, end quote, are now included to document or to augment diagrams and sketches in the revised habitat assessment guidelines, but wonder what access the public will have to those pics when commenting about the application or in neighborhood meetings. This would be helpful for accountability and evaluation of mitigation. Photos can take various perspectives. For example, photos of the Crestline development in Metzger taken by the applicant's representative showed only one tree, but not the 70 tall trees in the grove that were proposed to be cut down. There needs to be an independent reviewer. Similarly, using the Cedar Crest application as an example, the applicant representative saw, quote, no wildlife, end quote, whereas when the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife representative came, she saw about 20 wildlife and habitat. These habitat assessment guidelines should clarify requirements to take photos. There should be a standard protocol for taking photos, multiple photo points, for example, cardinal points, northeast, west, and south. But this should be discussed. We should find out what was going to work. Lack of transparency and accountability stands out that we haven't seen the ODF and W comments or to the versions of ORD 869 or the revised. We would like to see concurrence with state agencies for reviewing the HAGs and applications. We believe ODFW should be required to be involved in concurrence on the plan, so the county should be required. In conclusion, the current HAGs ignore forested, upland forested, and open areas. The HAG is defected and it downplays areas that are not treed, and there is no documenting the presence of actual wildlife. CPO4M finds the HAGs to be incomplete, defective, related to plants and wildlife species. Please make changes tonight before considering adoption of the habitat assessment guidelines. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. We did receive your email, so we had the benefit of that during your testimony as well. Mr. Moss.
Yes, Madam Chair. Next up, we have Mr. Ken Dobson. Mr. Dobson, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Ken Dobson. I'm an attorney who's been involved in this process for a while. I submitted some written testimony, but my biggest concern, or one of my concerns, is that the county is not following the process for land use ordinances set forth in the county charter. Although these guidelines are characterized as guidelines, they are actually binding substantive regulations that determine the boundaries of the SNRs and the level of enhancement that must be done. The county has a specific definition in its charter for land use ordinance, and this clearly falls within it. I understand the county council might disagree about this, but we can avoid a fight over this procedural problem by just delaying the adoption of these habitat assessment guidelines. I don't think you want another Aluba appeal on your hands. The Ordinance 869 is already on appeal to Aluba. Now, that will not stop it from taking effect absent a stay order, but as a practical matter, as long as there's that appeal before Aluba, 869 is not going to be acknowledged by the Department of Land Conservation Development or the Land Conservation Development Commission, which will present some practical difficulties for applicants and the county reviewing those applications. So it's not going to be business as usual as of tonight. There's going to be some problems approving applications without the acknowledgement that's not going to happen until the Aluba appeal is resolved sometime next year. So this gives us some time to really go back and fine tune these guidelines to make sure that they work, and more importantly, to make sure that the public has a meaningful opportunity to participate in the process as required under Comprehensive Plan Policy Number 2. And also make sure that the public is informed. ODFW reviewed this, made comments, and we still don't know what those comments are or whether the county did anything with those. So again, we urge the County Commission to hold off adoption until sometime in the new year. And I see my time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Mr. Moss?
We do not have anyone else signed up, Madam Chair.
All righty. And with that, then I'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission with regard to a motion to adopt the resolution in order, including Exhibit A, the Habitat Assessment Guidelines? Commissioner Schouten, you've made a motion previously. Would you?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion again, but I would like to ask County Council if they could respond to the last comments made by our last speaker, and what are the practical implications of waiting a little bit longer from a legal standpoint.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Scott, and I'll weigh in, members of the board. So again, as the staff has mentioned, this ordinance is in effect. There is an appeal, but that doesn't stop people from making applications right now. And so that is why staff is bringing it forward right now, so the people will have guidelines to use. The beauty of this just being technical guidelines is the board, if there's problems, the board can come back and fix it just through a resolution and order. It doesn't have to go through the process of filing ordinances, first and second reading, the regular process of ordinance. So I think it would be a good idea to give applicants who have, I believe there's, I think the planning staff can weigh in. There's been some pent-up demand because of the delay, because of the enforcement order. So, and there are procedural difficulties with applicants going forward during the when the applicant's on the appeal. They'll have to make goal findings and applications, but we anticipate them doing that, and we anticipate that these guidelines will help them make an application that we think will be successful. So I'll let the staff weigh in if they have anything else to add on to that, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I've made my motion to go ahead and adopt these guidelines.
Can I ask a clarifying question on Alan's response first? I wasn't fast enough with the mute button. So the Board of Commissioners adopted Ordinance 869, thereby satisfying the remand, I think it was, from LCDC. And now parties may be moving forward with an appeal to LUBA, but development applications can be submitted with that appeal in process, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, so we need to make sure that we have, so if I understand you correctly, we need to make sure that we have a version of the habitat assessment guidelines in place to ensure that the proper development practices per that ordinance follow through.
Right, we wanted to make sure there are technical standards, that they submit an application that meets the technical standards.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other commissioner questions on that? All right, Commissioner Scouten has made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second his motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
We'll move on then to a pair of action items related to body worn cameras. The first is to authorize the expenditure for the Sheriff's Office body worn camera program. We had an extensive work session presentation on this last Tuesday, but before we open up a public hearing for public comment, do we have a staff report tonight? Yes,
we do, Chair Harrington. We have a very brief staff report.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners. I'm Erin Calvert with the County Administrative Office. I'm also joined this evening by Sheriff Garrett and Sheriff's Office Business Manager John Steyer in the event there are any questions. This agenda item requests an action by the board titled Authorized Expenditure for the Sheriff's Office Body Worn Camera Program. And as a very brief staff report and summary, as you all know, over the past 6 months, your board has participated in several community conversations and listening sessions aimed to engage the public in discussion of the body worn camera program and other initiatives that were on their minds. The work session briefings occurred in June and September and December of this year, and they've really focused on the details of the body worn camera program and how that fits into the values of the Washington County Sheriff's Office, the Sheriff's Office body worn camera policy and prior pilot program information, the budget and the plan to pay for the program if authorized. And then last week, the board heard about the continuum of behavioral health services in the county and the subsequent gaps analysis and the planning for the future. I'm happy to dive deeper into any of these topics or to answer any of the questions the board may have, but that really does conclude the staff report. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions before we accept public comments? Nope, seeing none, I'll open a public hearing. Mr. Moss, do we have anyone signed up to testify on this tonight?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay. All righty. Well, I know I'd like to make some comments, but first I'd entertain any comments from my colleagues.
I'd like to make some comments as well.
Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers. Oops, sorry.
Si-
Not sure the orders, sorry.
I'm not either. Okay, I'll just jump in. For those who might be listening and for the board, you've known my position at the very beginning was I was very concerned, if not opposed to this particular motion that we're going to have tonight. I did that based upon a series of questions, and I had to do with everything from cost to how we were going to use the tape and how secure it was, and if officers could turn it on and off. And I'm delighted to say that every question that I raised, and I try to do lots of technical IT questions, they were answered. And so I was a skeptic, and I was not a supporter, and I am fully prepared to vote in favor of this tonight. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Treese.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple comments to make. I appreciated the presentation that we got last week that really demonstrated, and I think I used the term that this is not a zero-sum game between our behavioral health work and our sheriff's office work. And I am so pleased to see how they work toward common goals. So I will be voting in favor of this. I'm voting in favor because I believe that there are many purposes that this provides. It provides information back to the sheriff's office that can be used in training. It can be provided back to the individuals that are involved. To me, it is a very useful tool. And I do intend to continue to support our behavioral health approaches as well. So thank you for all of our constituents that made comment here. And I appreciate the public outreach that the staff has provided us with, and the fact that we've had the opportunity to listen to our constituents.
Commissioner Willie.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to the Sheriff's Department for following up. In our last conversation a couple of months ago, it was my request that we address the concerns of the three commissioners that had concerns. I think the sheriff has done a great job of doing that. And I just want to say thank you for that. And I am 100% in favor of endorsing this proposal and moving ahead. So thank you.
Commissioner Schouten, any comments?
I was simply just, I will be voting for this based on the comments that you have already heard from the other commissioners. I would also add that I think the ultimate success of this kind of equipment, and that it will not have negative impact or be a problem in a fundamental way with respect to people of color, and that this is going to be something that's going to be good for everyone in the community, I think depends on some degree on the quality of our law enforcement agency and on the quality of the leadership at the very top. And I have a great deal of confidence in our leadership there in that office, the sheriff's office. I'm confident that if we do have some problems, that they can be resolved. And I look forward to seeing a lot of the positive aspects of this program manifesting itself, and I feel confident that we can work through any problems that may occur with respect to them, given the good leadership that we have in the Sheriff's Department. So I will be voting for this program.
Thank you, Commissioner Schouten. I'll close and I'd ask my colleagues for a little bit of patience, because you heard me share some of these comments last week in our work session. But since this meeting has more public availability, I'd like to repeat many of those comments again. I want to thank all the organizations who shared their positions on this topic. Some of these groups are regional in nature, some are Washington County specific, but we had a really broad range of groups that represent a myriad of voices of our BIPOC community. Thank you too to the community members who turned out for the 4 August listening sessions, as well as the 4 November community investment conversations. I think we all learned quite a bit there. But a particular thank you also to the people who voted yes on the public safety levy, which passed by 55%. And that was just in the middle of May. And you let us know that you're willing to increase the investment in public safety, and to everyone who emailed, called, and provided testimony. This whole process was a real learning for me. This process took us from the day that I first proposed this investment to today, and it's been a long one. But I was reminded that it's critical to center the community before moving ahead with critical policy decisions. And our staff really helped with that. Staff throughout the main departments of Washington County, the classical departments, but also in the Sheriff's Department as well. We've really, I think, found a balance, and our work is about finding a balance. As an elected official, I have to balance the voices of the public, and that's the whole public, against input from subject matter experts and against my own judgment. I heard loud and clear that there is a segment of our community that wants us to defund or reallocate dollars from the sheriff's budget and invest those dollars in mental health and other social services. I've heard loud and clear from 55% of our community that voted to increase investments in public safety via the levy in May. As I think about the role of body-worn cameras as a public safety tool, I continue to believe they play a critical role in providing needed transparency. The death of Daniel Prude is a staunch example, a clear example of why I think body-worn cameras are so important. But for those body-worn cameras, we never would have known what happened to that gentleman. But body-worn cameras are not a solution. We still need policies in place that provide accountability. And as Commissioner Scouten mentioned, leadership. We certainly need oversight. We need our community to hold our public safety officials accountable. And more than that, we need humanity. We cannot allow our public safety officials to implement policy without an eye to what any reasonable person should do. I don't make these two decisions lightly. I know that there are community members who will not be pleased with my vote today. To those community members, I want to thank you for your thoughtful and passionate engagement. This vote is not an indication that I didn't hear you or that I didn't listen. I did. Rather, it's the result of all of these things that I've just mentioned. And it's my effort to balance the important role of transparency with oversight with right-sized investment. The vote tonight is not the end of the conversation about what we need to do in order to ensure that we are centering community need in public safety conversations and investments. With the help of the community, with the direction from our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, we will continue to tackle these hard questions. And yes, I join my colleagues in thanking Washington County senior leadership staff and Sheriff Garrett and his staff for helping us be eyes wide open and enable our agency to have an additional tool for transparency and for servicing our community. Thank you, colleagues. With that, we have two different actions before us this evening. The first is to authorize staff to proceed with the expenditure for the 5-year contract for the Sheriff's Office body-worn camera program. What are the wishes of the commission?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Willie and a second from Commissioner Roy Rogers. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. The next action item is directly related. This is to authorize the amendment to the contract for body-worn cameras. with Utility Associates, Inc. for full deployment of body-worn cameras at a cost not to exceed $1,481,670. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff on this matter? Aaron, I'm assuming we didn't have a staff report, so I didn't. Is there anything more?
Reiterate what you just said, so thank you.
Okay. What are the wishes of the commission?
Move for the recommended action.
We have a motion, and is one of those a second?
Sure.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much, colleagues. Next on the agenda is oral communication. Kevin, do we have anyone signed up for the second oral communication section?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. We have Kumar. Kumar, can you hear us?
Kumar, can you hear us?
Clerk Moss?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair Harrington and Board of Commissioners. Thank you again for affording me this all public testimony opportunity today. For the record, my name is Kumar Naharaja, resident of Washington County. I'm back again after my last testimony around 4 weeks back at the board meeting held on November 17, 2020. At that time, as a backdrop to this public testimony at the outset, I recap again to let the board know that I'm a volunteer registered with SERVOR, State Emergency Registry of Volunteers in Oregon, to serve in the COVID-19 response. I'm also cognizant of the latest and rapidly evolving situation and information related to COVID-19 in Oregon, Washington County, via my regular participation in the Oregon ECHO program for healthcare providers, which is offered periodically by the Oregon Health Authority. And additionally, I had the opportunity to hear the presentation on COVID-19 statistics in Washington County, presented by the HHS director this evening. Today, I want to bring to your attention about the continuing county closures of certain essential public offices that were previously, before the 2-week freeze set in on November 18, 2020, they were open by appointment only. Certain county offices in Washington County, such as the assessment and taxation, elections, administrative services, building services, current planning, long-range planning, continue to function on appointment basis, whereas access to public services at the law library, where other services in addition to legal research like printing, scanning, other services which are available by appointment remain still closed as of November 18, 2020. To briefly recap, on November 3, I provided oral public testimony to the Board of Commissioners regarding the need to increase or restore in-person time slots and access to public services. The board, as may be aware, that the law library was providing 45-minute slot per day, limited in-person access by appointment only, with COVID-19 protocols in place. Changes to the foregoing pattern access became effective November 2, and I presented oral and written public testimony, after which the slots increased to 4 per week. After the 2-week freeze set in, the law library continued to remain closed, and I requested in my public testimony on 11/17/20 I requested the board to keep the public services and other county in-person services open to the public while concurrently adopting the existing COVID-19 safety protocol. I had correctly pointed out at the time that the governor's 2-week freeze does not apply to offices and buildings owned or occupied by the local governments per Executive Order number 2056, paragraph 5C at page 6, signed November 17, 2020. In response to my testimony, the county administrator had mentioned that the decision to close the law library went through the law library board members, who consist of judges, attorneys, and library staff, and that they had agreed upon the closures. However, the county administrator did not disclose that the law library board does not have a public member, The public member position remains vacant as of this date. And I had earlier applied to be nominated as a volunteer public member on the Law Library Board, and I had forwarded my letter of interest to Clerk Moss, which I think was forwarded to the appropriate officials. And I've not received any status updates after I expressed my interest. That said, the County Council in my last testimony correctly cited that the county is exempt from the executive orders and that the county is free to follow its own regulations. The state government is required to follow the Department of Administrative Services guidance, and I infer that the local governments would follow the same guidance as well. The state government, the state enterprise workplace guidance directs that to the extent that the closure is not feasible, in-person interactions between staff and the public should be by appointment only to the maximum extent possible. I believe the law library is in a good position because there is only one person allowed at a given time. And the law library staff are well barricaded in their own offices. And it's a very secure environment, and I don't understand why the services are being closed. So I would like to hear from the administration and the board as to the reason for the closure. And in the presentation by the HHS director, there wasn't statistics to prove that the source of the COVID-19 cases was the county offices, because it's clearly not the place where the COVID-19 is originating, because these offices, they're following the protocols. They're following the wearing masks, physical distancing. Every protocol is in place. And these are clearly not the sources of infection in the state or in the county. And there is no statistic that points that the closure of these offices has decreased the number of cases. As you can see, there were 54 deaths today, which is the highest since the pandemic started. So I would request the board to reconsider the decision and open these services following, keeping the COVID-19 protocols strictly in place.
Okay. Thank you, Kumar, for your comments.
Thank you.
Ms. Angie, I know you have followed up with Kumar in the past. Is there any comment you'd like to make tonight?
I would like to actually ask Erin Culvert to respond because she has been working directly with Kumar as well as the Law Library and County Council on this. Thank you for being here, Erin.
Sure, thank you, Board of Commissioners, and thank you, Mr. Naharaja. We've had a few opportunities to talk via email. I guess what I would say first, as we've talked about several times, is the county recognizes that the impact of limiting services is significant. It's not a decision that we've made lightly or without thought of service need. What we're trying to balance, of course, is, as you continue to hear in the COVID-19 updates by Ms. Kyle, that we're just trying to balance the health and safety of both our staff as well as members of the public while still trying to provide enough services to get folks what they need. And we understand that the limitations, it doesn't provide a full service. We are providing remote services, so services by telephone, by email, and then they're doing their best to try to print and copy documents within the restrictions of doing so and send that out via mail to patrons when they need it. I'm happy to answer any additional questions the board might have.
I would just add, if I might, that we have had some incidents of Washington County staff members being sickened with COVID-19. We are in the extreme risk category. This board has been very clear in supporting the science and wanting to try to do all that we can to minimize the spread of this contagious disease, because anyone who gets sick certainly is suffering, and there are people who are experiencing absolutely horrific ramifications. Some even have died. So
I would also like to respond, Chair Harrington and board, relative to the vacant seat. Deputy County Administrator Calvert is working with the Law Library and County Council to look into that. And we can provide an update as we move forward through that process.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that we're beginning to get some understanding of the long-term consequences of getting COVID, and they can be very profound and have many, many negative impacts, both neurological, respiratory, even in terms of reproductive, reproductive part of our body. A lot of negative consequences on a lot of different fronts long term. I'm also mindful of the fact that we're a very large county in terms of population. We have a large and growing legal community. And unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of a large university or law library affiliated with that. And so for many lawyers and for many people who need to look at the law who aren't necessarily even lawyers, the only resource that's really within some reasonable distance here in the county is our county law library. And so we just need to be mindful of that reality as well. We have a dearth really of legal resources for a county of our size. So it's a difficult balancing act all around.
Thank you, Commissioner Scouten. Appreciate it. I don't see any other staff or commissioner comments on this. Mr. Moss, is there anyone else who has signed up?
There is not, Madam Chair.
All righty. Well, that finishes our second oral communication section. Next, our board announcements. I'd just like to share a couple. Tonight is Commissioner Dick Scouten's last evening board meeting, and the last Tuesday where we're having both an extensive work session meeting as well as a board meeting tonight. Thursday, we'll be having a celebration, thanking him for his wonderful 20-year tenure here in public service with Washington County, and also to wish him well in his next chapter. We do have a board meeting next Tuesday, December 22nd, set for 10 a.m. Then we find ourselves on break, a wonderful, well-earned break through the beginning of the new year. And then we're faced with the new year in January and all that it will bring, with a set of meetings on January 5th, starting with the swearing in of our county level elected officials. That will be Commissioner Roy Rogers, Sheriff Pat Garrett, and the newest member of this county commission, the swearing in of Commissioner-elect Nafisa Faye. Then we'll have our work session and board meeting that day, starting both in the morning. Thursday, January 7th, we'll have a roundtable that starts at 10 in the morning. The following Tuesday, January 12th, is a work session day starting at 8:30. And the Tuesday after Martin Luther King holiday of Monday, January 18th, will take us to Tuesday, January 19th with a pair of meetings, work session at 8:30, board meeting at 10. Are there any other board announcements at this time? Seeing none.
Thank you for your kind Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me jump in just for a minute.
All right.
Chair kind of beat me to it a little bit, but this will be your last meeting, other than we have one little tiny one that's not going to last long, and I don't think the viewing public is probably going to see it. You and I have been together for about 1,000 meetings, somewhere right in that fashion. If you can take those 20 years and about 50 meetings a year, somewhere in that vicinity, you've done an outstanding job, Dick. You really have.
Thank you.
You've been dedicated to this county, and you've shown great leadership, and you've been tireless in your efforts. I can't tell the folks who might be watching how many hours you've put in, but it's just been amazing. You've brought a lot of efforts and championship to bike and ped projects and parks. You've advanced all of those significantly since you and I started working together. So I've appreciated your thoughtful approach. Over the years, we've had different philosophies a bit on things, but probably 95% of the time or better, we were always voting the same because of you're always looking for a way to find an approach that would work for everyone. And so I've appreciated your style. I've appreciated your efforts. I've told you more than once, it's going to get sickening after a while if I say it too much, but I'm going to really miss you. I think that your law background, it's been just a great asset. And so you, as the chair mentioned, you have a Thursday event. It's pretty full with speakers, so the public will not be able to speak, but I would hope that anyone listening or any of your friends might drop a note and say their adieus and on to your well-deserved retirement. So thanks, Dick, for all the memories.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you, Chair. I hate goodbye, so I'm going to just reserve the goodbye part for the retirement event on Thursday. I find saying goodbye very painful, but it's been a great 20 years. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had, and I've such a range of topics and such a great county, and I've had wonderful colleagues and a lot of great staff work. It's been just a huge and wonderful team effort, and I am going to miss that. I am also ready to leave. I feel like I don't want to be stale here. I don't want to put in a half-hearted effort, and so to avoid that, among other things, I'm ready to move on. But it's been fantastic, and it's been the last 2 years together have been particularly good, actually. So thank you.
Dick, I'll reserve up my goodbyes for Thursday, but I do want to tell you that in my first term here, and I have learned from the best. So thank you so much for your guidance, for your mentorship, and your friendship. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very kind. Thank you, Pam.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to more of the accolades that we know you well deserve in the event on Thursday. All righty. Now I'm all aflutter. Aha. Are there any other board announcements or leadership announcements before we adjourn tonight's meeting? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Scouten gets to adjourn tonight's meeting
Right.
with a second from Commissioner Willie.
Good.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting of December 15th, 2020, Commissioner Dick Scouten's last evening meeting, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously 5-0. We'll see you.
Thank you.
See you again on Thursday and then
Yes.
again next Tuesday for a short meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for a good meeting.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
commissioners. Thank you very much.